Stupendous. Traumatized me. This book traumatized me. Rebecca. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kelly. We're here to talk about books. The puppies are sleeping, the fire is blazing, I have a cup of cider hot on the coffee table in front of me, and I thought we could just have a little chat about my favorite books, because I've been doing this booktube thing for like a little minute now, and I realized I've never actually made just like a favorites video. That's kind of dumb. I have a lot of favorite books, so I'm gonna kind of divide this up. Today we're gonna do favorite standalones, and on another day I will do a favorite series. But I'm not gonna be particularly picky about this. I haven't pre-made my list or anything. I'm just gonna be going through all the books that I read and picking out the ones that I'm like, oh, I love that one. And hopefully it'll give you a little bit of an idea of what kind of books I like. Let's just do the damn thing. Number one, these are in no particular order. This is not number one. Just the first one that I am talking about is Deeplight by Frances Hardinge, I think is how you say that name. I'm sorry if that's wrong. It probably is. This book is a green ocean book. Ocean books, I feel, fall into three distinct categories. There are green ocean books, blue ocean books, and gray ocean books. And this is a green ocean book. It's got that like seaweed, algae on the rocks kind of feeling. It's like a little bit gross. It's very atmospheric, but you get that, it's that very kind of almost grimy sort of ocean story. Oh, it's so good. Try to refrain from saying all of these books are so good. Obviously, I think that they're good, or we wouldn't be talking about them today. So this book follows Hark, our main character, who is a boy who lives on this island. In the ocean around these islands, there's like a little cluster of islands. There used to be gods living in the ocean, these giant creatures that the people worshipped. Now the gods are dead, and once in a while someone will dredge up the body of a god, and the pieces of that god's body are incredibly valuable. They can be used for all kinds of different things. Hark, he's a street urchin and he's a bit of a con artist, and basically will sell people fake godware, is what they call the pieces of these gods' bodies. One day, he and his friend Jelt, who is his like slightly older friend who's got like that sort of big brother but sort of his boss a little bit sort of thing going on, they dive down into the ocean to recover some godware and end up finding something very strange that affects Jelt very deeply, and he turns into a very different person. It's a story about Hark and Jelt's relationship. It's a story about toxic friendship, like that kind of, those friends that like you love them so much and you can't let them go, even though being friends with them is like draining your life force out of your body. It's beautifully written. The world building is spectacular, unlike anything I've ever read before. It's just so imaginative. The gods are terrifying. The characters are really well done, really complex and unique, and really just like jump off the page. And this book, it was also like, it's not scary, but it did end up being more haunting than I expected it to be. Yeah, this one was just incredible, amazing, wonderful, lovely, terrifying, beautiful, existential, lovely book. Next is October by Katya Balen. This book follows October, our young protagonist, who lives in the forest with her father, and they don't need anything but each other until her 11th birthday, when an accident happens that changes her life forever. This book is about growing up. It's about becoming yourself. It's about the forest, and it's about it's about the relationships between parents and their children. It's about those feelings that you have when you are that age, 11-ish, and you so desperately want to be loved, and you don't know how to express that to the people that you love. October is so charming. She's so real as like a little girl who has lived in the forest her whole life and has no idea how to talk to people or how to socialize or how to just like exist among people, she is just absolutely delightful. There are all of these, why can't I find one now that I'm looking for one? There are literally so many owl illustrations sprinkled throughout the whole book. The owl is a big part of the story. That's also incredible, amazing, wonderful, beautiful. I sat down to read it one night and I was like, I'm just going to read a couple chapters. And then I read my couple chapters and I was like, okay, just one more. They're pretty short chapters. I'll just read one more. And then I finished the book. I read the bulk of this book in one sitting, I'm pretty sure, because I couldn't stop. And I was sobbing. Oh, I love this book. I love this book. I love this book. And it is the most beautiful book that I own. Look at her. Look at her. Are you kidding? Babel, or The Necessity of Violence by Rebecca Kuang, who can do no wrong. Rebecca owes me compensation for the emotional turmoil that her work in general has put me through. Babel was no exception. Babel is about a boy taken from Canton when his family dies by an enigmatic English professor. He's brought to London, where he is raised by the professor and eventually enters Oxford's Institute of Translation, Babel, which is a fictional part of the real Oxford. Rebecca took the world that we live in, added a magic system to it, and integrated it so seamlessly into the world. The magic system in this book is hard, at least for me, to explain. So in order to do magic, the person doing the magic will have to match a pair of words in different languages. And then what's lost in translation between those two words is where the magic happens. It's, again, very bad at explaining this. But I started to, as you get into the book, you start to kind of figure out, you get a feel for the magic and start, thinking about all the ways that it could be used. But then Kuang just finds new ways to use it that are beyond what you would have ever expected. Crazy, weird ways to use this magic that are surprising and wonderful and strange. And it's also so thematically resonant. This book is about colonialism and racism and privilege and oppression and gender dynamics and all of this stuff. It's incredible. And the way that the magic system is baked into all of that, so that the magic system itself is a commentary on all of those things, it's just stupendous. The character work, I loved Kuang's character work in The Poppy War, but in Babel, it just was up a notch. She has already improved so much as a writer, and she was already starting from a very high place. So, I'm obsessed with her. I'm obsessed with this book. Again, cried like a baby, reading the ending. Traumatized me. This book traumatized me. I Capture the Castle by Dodie Smith follows Cass, who is I think she's 16 years old, and her family, who live in an old, crumbling castle. They are all very eccentric. Her father is a washed-up, one-hit wonder of a writer, and his wife, her stepmother, was a model, and she's wild. This book, it is a classic. It reads so easy, so if you're not someone who generally reads a lot of classics or doesn't generally enjoy the way classics are written, you might still enjoy this one. It's so accessible. It's so voicey. Cass is just a delightful protagonist to follow. What I really loved about this book, on top of, there was a lot of things, but one of the things that really sticks with me is that Cassandra is a character who, in a lot of ways, is very self-aware, but she's self-aware in the way that a 16-year-old is self-aware, where it's she's almost got it, but she is still wrong about a lot of things because she's just young and inexperienced. And what's fun about this book is that you as the reader, are watching her grow, and you're seeing the things that she's figuring out, this sort of coming of age story, but at the same time, you're also seeing where she's still wrong. And she doesn't, you as the reader will understand her better than she understands herself. And I feel like that's a really difficult thing to pull off. And in this book, it's stupendously done. So yeah, that and just the prose, the voice of this book is just incredible. I write this sitting in the kitchen sink. That is, my feet are in it. The rest of me is on the draining board, which I have padded with our dog's blanket and the tea cozy. I can't say that I am really comfortable, and there is a depressing smell of carbolic soap, but this is the only part of the kitchen where there is any daylight left, and I have found that sitting in a place where you have never sat before can be inspiring. I wrote my very best poem while sitting on the henhouse, though even that isn't a very good poem. I have decided my poetry is so bad that I mustn't write any more of it. That's the opening paragraph. And right away I was like, I know her. And that just continues throughout the whole book. And it's just stupendous. Stupendous. All the Murmuring Bones by A.G. Slatter is a mermaid book. This is almost a black ocean book. This isn't really an ocean book. It's got mermaids, but it's not really an ocean book. So I guess it makes sense that it doesn't fall into my ocean color categories. This book follows a young woman whose name I don't remember, but who, as a person, has stuck with me. She comes off at first, you're like, oh, she's a good girl, but actually, she's a little bit cutthroat. This book is all, like, family secrets, betrayal, a lot of folklore influence. There are, like, deals with eldritch creatures, like, all kinds of crazy stuff. The plot sort of meanders a little bit, so if you are someone who needs, like, a really straightforward, concise plot, this probably, might not entirely not be for you, but that probably will bug you, because it is, like, you think you're doing one thing, and then eventually it kind of switches over to something else, which personally I felt made sense for the story and made sense for what the author was trying to do, but I could see how that could be frustrating and annoying for some readers. But yeah, I love this book. Girls at the Edge of the World by Brooke Robson. I will never stop screaming about this book. This is a gray ocean book. However, it is also a decadent, colorful, magical, beautiful, sapphic, lovely, amazing love story and fantasy. This takes place in a world that regularly floods, like fully worldwide flood. So the culture is based around these floods. The religion is based around these floods. It's very entwined in the soul of the book. And we're following two young women. You have Natasha, who is the leader of the Royal Flyers, which is a group of aerial silk dancers. I can never think what they're called. Aerialists who work in the palace. And our other protagonist, Ella, infiltrates the Royal Flyers in order to gain access to the palace and exact a revenge plot. Everything about this book is just perfect. It's beautiful. The world is amazing. The characters are amazing. The relationships are amazing, not only between Ella and Natasha, which is just incredible. The sapphic pining is just top tier, but also their relationships with, like, past loves, with their friends, with just all the people around them. Like, it's so good. It's so good. It's so good. It's so good. Audiobook is also very good. The 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield is about a young woman who is a bit of an amateur biographer who goes to the house of a fictional best-selling author in order to do her biography. This is told partially from that character's perspective of her, like, going to the woman's house and whatever, but then there are also just chapters that are just this woman, the author, telling the main character her story of her life. And there's a mystery woven into that tale that is kind of being paralleled in her past. It's a mystery of this author's past, but it also is a part of her present. And so our main character is sort of trying to figure this out at the same time that she is trying to listen to the story the way that the author is telling it to her. The relationship between these two women is beautiful. It's a story about sisterhood. It's a story about books and the love of story. The writing is beautiful. This one's incredible. I will say the audiobook is abridged, which I didn't know when I listened to it. I listened to the whole audiobook, and then my friend started reading she started reading both at the same time. She was, like, reading the physical version, but also listening to the audiobook when she was out and about, and she informed me that there were parts missing from the audiobook. So then I went out and I got the physical book and I read it again immediately. The audiobook, you're not necessarily, like, you're still going to have a good experience with the audiobook, and it's very well done. It's amazing. Like, the performance of the audiobook is incredible. But what is missing from it that is in the print version is worth reading the print version. It's just good stuff. It's all good stuff. And you want more of this book. Like, that was one of the reasons I read it again right away, because I was like, if there's more of this story that I didn't get to experience, I want to experience all of it, because all of it was amazing. The atmosphere, the characters, just, amazing. So good. So good. The Raven and the Reindeer by T. Kingfisher is a retelling of the Snow Queen fairy tale. Our protagonist, Goethe, has always been in love with her childhood best friend, but when he is abducted by the Ice Queen, she sets off on a journey to find him and comes to discover that all may not be as she thought, including her own heart. She makes some wonderful friends along the way. This is it's a cold, icy book, and it's very, very visceral. Like, you feel everything, which sometimes can be unpleasant. Like, you feel it so much that it can be unpleasant, and I mean that in the best way. Persuasion by Jane Austen. I probably could have picked any Jane Austen for this, any and all Jane Austen. I love Jane Austen, but I decided to go with Persuasion because I feel like this is one of her more underappreciated books. Maybe a little less so now that there's a movie, a show? I haven't watched it. The new thing that came out that was Persuasion. But still, like, I feel like when you ask someone, like, what's your favorite Jane Austen? They never say Persuasion. Which this one might be my favorite. I think this one has my favorite love declaration of any Jane Austen. The whole story is very quiet, and Anne, our heroine, she has a quieter strength than your typical Austen heroine, which is not better. It's just different. I don't know, it was like, for how slow this story is, I still was so wrapped in it the whole time and so enraptured with the characters. And it has, all that, like, your standard Jane Austen humor. Just beautiful, 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 beautiful. Okay, I'm getting super hot in front of the fire, go figure. So I'm going to try to rapid fire through some of the rest of these. The Song of Achilles. You probably know what this is. It's a retelling of the story of Achilles and Patroclus, who were totally gay and in love with each other. This book the prose is incredible, the love story is just transcendent, and it's like shimmery gold, beautiful, lovely, wonderful, amazing story. You already know this. If you were watching a video about books, then you have seen Song of Achilles talked about before, and I don't need to explain it to you, but I love this book. The Traveling Cat Chronicles by Hiro Arikawa. This book feels like a Ghibli movie. It literally, like, I don't know how else to describe it. It is that sort of, that melancholy, like, aching, but hopeful, but sad, and tender, and sweet. It's about a cat, or it's told from the perspective of the cat, as his owner is taking him around, like, driving him all over the place, and is, like, going to see all of his old friends. And this cat, it's just this relationship between the cat and his owner. And if you have cats, if you love cats, if you've ever had a cat that you loved, you need to read this book and be prepared to cry your eyes out. It's so tender, it's so sweet, but it's so full of hope and love and joy and gratitude, and it's just so good. The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I know that I'm basic. I know it, but I don't care. I think about this book all the time. I think about it all the time. It messed me up. I know that we're not supposed to want to be like the group of classist scholars that Richard gets involved in. Like, I know that. But the aesthetic, man. The longing for the picturesque at all costs. Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. This is an old favorite. This is more of like a, this book has a very special place in my heart. The last time that I reread it, I found that I didn't connect with it as much as I used to, but this was an early favorite of mine. This was one of the first classics that I read and, like, really loved. This was, like, a favorite when I was, like, a preteen, young teenager. And I still feel such a connection to all of the March sisters, especially Jo. I'm a writer. I'm basic. We've been over this. And I know I'm sorry to Louisa for even saying this, but it is quite moralizing. And I know that was her least favorite part of this book as well, which she didn't even like, so I feel like it's okay. But it is. It's a little bit moralizing, and I could do without some of that. I don't agree with everything in this book, and so now when last time I reread it, I was like, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. But that being said, it is also a classic, and so it's like, it kind of goes with the territory. But because I was so enamored with it when I was young, I don't like feeling that way about it. I still do love this book, and I still consider it a favorite, but it used to be like, this was my favorite book, and now I'm like, It's still special to me, but we're not there anymore. We're growing apart. I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. Okay, I guess that's actually the end of my list. I didn't really realize that was the last one that I was going to talk about. But that is kind of it. I do want to give an honorable mention to The Princess Bride, Emma, specifically by Jane Austen. I know I kind of said Jane Austen in general, but still. The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill, and The Darkling Bride by Laura Anderson. All of those are also... What is it? We can't have a video, no puppers. Come here, come. I love you, baby. I love you, baby. Thank you. Okay, so that's all. It's very hot. I need to get off of this hearth immediately. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Do we share any favorites? Let me know. You can like and subscribe.